All right, Kyle, would you like to start off? Welcome to the AIA Spring Lecture for Central Pennsylvania.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. And like I said, Seth mentioned, welcome to the 2020 Spring Lecture. We're grateful that you could join us tonight. Certainly isn't how we envisioned tonight's event going originally, and we miss seeing you all, interacting with you all, and catching up with all of our colleagues. But I have no doubt you'll find tonight's presentation very enjoyable and very insightful. So we're very grateful for you guys' participation tonight. A special thank you to our lecture committee for all of their hard work, especially to change gears midstream and pull this event together. Specifically, Chris Dawson and Seth Wentz, you immensely appreciated all your efforts to pull this together, as well as your efforts to pull our fall lecture together. Really, I think without your leadership there, this event also wouldn't be, able to occur. I want to provide a little bit of update on AIA Central PA business for everyone. We are continuing discussions on how best to provide our services and events to you for the remainder of the year. Of course, this COVID-19 pandemic has really changed how we typically gather and how we typically present ourselves. So we're evaluating all of our options and continuing to provide those events, especially our yearly ones that we do every year. As of right now, we are looking at how to move the Expo or Design Awards to a digital format similar to what we're doing tonight. It looks more likely than not, the Expo itself will probably not be occurring this year, but we will still look to see how we get our sponsors and vendors involved in some capacity. We certainly welcome any suggestions for any new events that we haven't done before, events for new things that may be in support of COVID-19 response efforts, or anything else that may be able to support our membership during these events. In the meantime, we're also continuing to support AIPA in their efforts to advocate for the profession and provide the necessary resources to our industry during this crisis. I applaud the efforts so far by AIPA, and I encourage you all to connect either with us directly or directly with AIPA to see how you can get involved and advocate. I think right now more than ever, our efforts are going to benefit us all in the long run. Please continue to check your email for bulletins, webinars, resources as new and updated information continues to develop. AIPA has been highly focused on keeping us all informed as much as possible, and they've been up to date on all the changes. So certainly weekly, if not more than that, updates are going out. So please stay connected with those. One of those is a webinar hosted tomorrow, the first in a series called Citizen Architect. The presentation will focus on architects' role in reopening Pennsylvania, providing state and federal legislative updates and resources for members as we reimagine alternatives in the built environment. Lastly, I just want to make a note and appreciation for your donation to tonight's event. We'll be gathering those funds and donating to a cause in support of COVID-19 response. Your donations are greatly appreciated and will go a long way to helping someone in need. So thank you again, and I hope to see you all soon.
All right, thank you, Kyle. I'm Seth Wentz, and as Kyle mentioned, along with Chris Dawson, the lecture committee chair, we're happy to have you joining us. It's my honor to have Rand Elliott, founder of Rand Elliott Architects, joining us for the first ever AIA Central Pennsylvania virtual lecture. Our chapter prides itself in having high quality guests to share their experiences and works to our members. They have included such talent as Toshiko Mori, Marlon Blackwell, Shigeru Ban, Todd Williams and Billy Chen, and most recently, Peter Bowen, to name a few. These events would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors. Their contributions especially are impactful at this time that we're living in. Our decision to move forward with the lecture in a virtual platform was an easy one, bringing meaningful value and experience to our members. I'd like to thank each of the sponsors for making this experience possible. The spring lecture sponsors can be found in the digital program each member received via email link today. If you missed the program, it's right next to the register button in today's advertisement email. Sponsors include Armstrong Ceiling Solutions, Campbell Associates, Chris Dawson Architect, Conestoga Tile, Diversified, Keith Bush Associates, Murphy and Dittenhafer Architects, and Whitney Bailey Cox and Magnani LLC. We sincerely thank you for making this event possible. I'd also like to thank Jim White of Chris Dawson Architects for assisting with the advertising and programs. Really appreciate your efforts on that. As a plug to our future events, we are proud to announce that Annabelle Seldorf, FAIA, will be joining us in the fall. Please keep an eye out for more information on the fall lecture in the newsletters and other email communications. Rand Elliott has been gracious enough to allow us to record this presentation. The recording will be accessible through the AIA Central Pennsylvania website and can be rewatched or shared with others who were unable to attend this evening. The presentation is registered for AIA with 1.5 learning units. Rand Elliott is a unique person. His roots are and have always been in Oklahoma. He graduated Alpha Rho Chi medalist at Oklahoma State University at the top of his class. At the age of 27, Rand Elliott founded Rand Elliott Architects in Oklahoma, providing architectural, interior, and graphic design services. He takes great pride in his location and the ability to provide meaningful, rich work at the local, national, and international level from such a humble place. Over the course of his career, Rand Elliott Architects has earned 356 awards for architectural excellence, 10 national AIA Honor Awards for architecture, and has over 450 books and publication features. Additionally, Rand has received more local, state, and national awards than we have time to mention on this program. He received his fellowship through the American Institute of Architects, was inducted in the 22nd Hall of Fame for Interior Design Magazine 2006, and was recognized in 2010 with a Distinguished Alumni Award from his alma mater, Oklahoma State University. My first exposure to Rand Elliott's work was in publications like Architectural Record, with projects including Pop Arcadia, Image Next Houston, and KJ McNitt Construction Company. His projects all had a common thread. They merged honesty of structure, material, light, color, in a way that created sculptural building experiences. And that's truly what Rand Elliott has created through his vast repertoire of projects, experiences through the built environment. I was lucky enough to be a student at Philadelphia University when Rand came to lecture. I found the work to be inspiring, his stories and experiences interesting, and his personality to be enthralling, if not just a bit quirky. As meaningful as I found the lecture to be, the true lasting impression occurred after the lecture, when he walked with the architecture students across campus to the architecture studio, where he took time to look at the students' work, provide advice, and share more stories and experiences. To my knowledge, in the years that I attended Philly U, he was the only guest to make a point to visit the students and see their works. When I invited Rand to join us for the spring lecture, he expressed interest in providing a different type of lecture, one that strayed from the greatest hits style that we've all seen. He asked if he could share just one project, the recently completed Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center. I wholeheartedly agreed with the concept, and Rand provided the lecture for us titled One. For more than 30 years, Oklahoma Contemporary has been a vital resource for contemporary art experiences of all kinds in the region. They create opportunities for the different communities to experience art, encounter new ideas, and explore creative potential. Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center encourages artistic expression in all of its forms through education, exhibitions, and performances. They endeavor to instill the public a lifetime appreciation for the arts and enthusiasm for the creative practice. And with that, I turn this over to Rand Elliott, FAIA, to share his experiences. Rand?
Thank you very much. I wanted to start by see if I was hearing this correctly. Seth, did you call me quirky?
That's correct. You had some fun stories to share at that lecture.
Well, I am so pleased that you would call me quirky. So I didn't take that as a negative. I took it as a positive. Thanks so much. And my wife is listening tonight, and she will be giggling at home, thinking that it's worse than quirky. I'd like to just start by saying hi, hello, everybody. None of us have ever done this before, and so if I fall out of my chair or something happens or the screen goes black, we'll all just chalk it up to experience along the way. As Seth said, my name is Rand Elliott. Our firm, Rand Elliott Architects, is really responsible for the design of the new Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center. This very handsome group of men, and I'm sorry there were no women in here, but they were off over here on the right. These are the architects and contractors in terms of leadership to build the project in particular. And my partner, Bill Yin, is the gentleman over to my right, and standing next to him is Cody Pistolka, and these gentlemen were really responsible to make this happen. The balding fellow in the middle is a college classmate of mine named James Pickle. Yes, Pickle. Matt Thomas is the owner of the contracting company. Anyway, all of these folks are very important and could not have been better to work with in doing this project. So what I'd like to do is I'd really like to begin by talking about context and in particular how this project began to be happening or approved or moving forward. In fact, I've thought a little bit about this presentation as a documentary, and hopefully that will make some sense as we go through. I'd like to start by showing you two photographs of a survey crew that were a part of surveying downtown Oklahoma City at the time of the land run in 1889. What's particularly important about this is what they were doing. And a second part is that the label on the photograph says Losey, L-O-S-E-Y, and that's my wife's grandfather who took these studio images in the state of Oklahoma, actually before the state of Oklahoma. Here's the second crew. This is a downtown street happening as we speak, and of course his name was North Losey, and this is a documentary that shows what really happened. What's important about these two photographs has to do with the fact that these three magenta rectangles on the left were the result of these two survey crews missing the mark. One started in North Oklahoma City, one started in South Oklahoma City, and by the time they got to the point where they were supposed to touch, they were off by 90 feet. So I'm not sure I would be hiring that survey crew, either one of them, to be doing any of my work. But what happened is that it created Campbell Art Park, which is these three blocks that were the offset part of the miss. And our building that we're going to talk about today, 11th Street, is the first magenta rectangle, and just to the right of that is the site that we're going to be building this building on. These are Sanborn maps, which actually were used to identify buildings in Oklahoma City that would burn. And the masonry ones wouldn't, but all the wood buildings are noted because this map series was done by a group of insurance company people. One of the things that's important about this context is what goes on around it. There's a railroad on the east side. There's a streetcar on the west, and then this little misfire from a survey point of view. This is a sunrise photograph of an empty boxcar building, or excuse me, boxcar going past the site, and it gives you a little bit of a preview about our location. This is a real photo taken by my photographer as we sat out waiting for this train to come by. This is the east side of the building. The building we're going to be talking about is the aluminum skin building just to the left, and then the masonry building in the middle is a historic warehouse building that is the maker space, if you will. We also had a railway system that was primarily a streetcar system in the late 1800s through about 1920. The sign on the front says skating at Delmar. Delmar Gardens was a historic amusement park along the Oklahoma River. Downtown looked kind of like this in the teens, if you can see all the cars parked along there and the streetcar going up and down. I happen to notice there's the Southern Pharmacy, and I think it says Bob's Electrical Supply. This is our current streetcar system. This was enacted and began operation in 2019. It's a small area of downtown, but we're getting used to having this kind of transportation available to us in 2020. Like most buildings that you have done, just like I have done, it really begins with programming. And so I'm going to fast forward to 2010. This project was 10 years in the process, not because we were slow, but because there were lots of things to go on during that period of time. So there were focus groups, as you can imagine. There were people in the community who were requested to make comments about what kind of art center we would need. And we really began the design process in earnest in 2012. So the programming, we presented this and put this together in 2013. And we did a series of blocks, if you will, that helped identify the program itself. And, this was for presentation to our community, and it included loading, it included the community sales area, the prep and crate area, first aid, all that sort of thing. And so we did this in an effort to show our client how programming works. Offices, administration, boardroom, art, storage or loading dock, teacher's lounge, all this, about 7,000 square feet. The total building ends up being about 54,000 square feet. At one point, there were 2 dance theaters. We finally ended up with just one, total of about 2,600 square feet. The education in classrooms, which is really the basis for the project. This is an arts education center that also does exhibitions from artists all over the world, and you'll see that. But it's about art of our time. It's of this moment. It's not art for deceased artists of any kind. So the classrooms included photography, fiber, digital printing, graphic design, moving images, artists in residence. All those elements are what Oklahoma Contemporary teaches. The entrance areas included a lobby, what was called a lunchroom at the time is now a cafe, coat room, information, family toilets, regular toilets, a gift shop, and so forth. The existing brick building, which is what we called it starting out, is really the Makers building or the Studios building today, is 10,000 square feet. It was built in 1910. You'll see it in more detail here in a moment. But all of the things that they wanted to do included pottery, woodworking, an art studio and classroom, jewelry, certainly storage and supply storage. You need first aid if you've got big saws and welding machines, so we have that. And then lobby and training opportunities for artists. And we have a wonderful outdoor patio area for artists to work outdoors. The outdoor spaces, in fact, included an outdoor cafe, an events plaza, and a play area because we've got lots of kids. Their classes actually start pre-K. Gallery spaces included 2, a medium one at 3,000, a large gallery at 5,000 square feet for a total of 8,000 square feet of gallery space. Those are planned and programmed gallery spaces. There are other small spaces throughout the building. Operational spaces included refuse or trash and catering kitchen, prep kitchen along the way. The performance events included a black box theater, control room, special events requirements, green room, dressing rooms, all of those kinds of things to support this. This is suitable for 150 to 200 people, and you'll see that. So we took that programming information and we really began to focus on massing studies. These were not focused on the site whatsoever. They were about massing. It was about comparing a vertical structure with a horizontal structure. You're going to see that. It was about trying to make this building feel like the arts in some particular way that made it important and certainly recognizable. And you begin to see some of my early studies here that include color. I was a student of Johannes Eiten, a German colorist that was a part of the Bauhaus, and it influenced a number of things that we were working on. As you can see, there's just these exercises in how color might be affected to say this is not a hospital, this is not a restaurant, this is an arts facility. And so we were looking for opportunities to be able to do that. In this particular instance, we're contemplating a glossy or glazed brick, white brick, that would be very simple and straightforward, and then artistic shapes that would then, in essence, cast its own shadow and therefore be moving or a building in motion and changing, which will be important as we go through the process. But you can see that it has a curiosity about it. Same thing here, how the windows might be placed. And then trying to get less and less. Can you get less and less and more impact by the shapes, the shadows, and those kinds of things that really make you understand what goes on in this building? Concept 5 was the space or the building concept that most everybody picked, interestingly enough. And it was basically this series of folds. And that will have a lot more meaning as we go through here because the whole name and the concept for the building comes about as a result of this simple form. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of work that we do and the things that we're thinking about, it has to do with place. How do you place this building in a particular location? Well, the two elements on the upper right-hand corner casting its shadow illustrate the fact that the address of this building is at 11 Northeast 11th. And it was a way to artistically interpret that address. To the right was an outdoor space floating above a porte-cochere. Continues showing the folding qualities of the building. This is basically taking the program and adapting it as form. Each one of those boxes cubically represented a particular function in the building program that you saw earlier. It's literally a translation. We brought artwork off the ground, really trying to create a sense of excitement here. Then we did versions where we were comparing or completing an addition at the time of the outset of the building, which would include not a second building, which we ended up doing, but an extension of the main building. The main building block is the large one to the right. The small one to the left is actually where the makerspace began at the earliest phases. We looked at stacking the program, again, this outdoor deck. We particularly like the lady floating in the middle of the photograph. That was, of course, planned. And then you see coming around to see another form being created as a result of program. And then we began to look at the fact that, well, what if we can't afford the idea of a multi-story building? What if it has to be flat? We had 4.8 acres. We could do a flat building, and so we began to illustrate that as well. Certainly there would be a cost benefit to this. And this is basically a big plinth floating above the ground, just like the two people are there on this photo, which I'm just noticing for the first time, and I'm just appalled and embarrassed. This gives you a sense of the view that the people in the community would see as they approach the building. Parking would be on the right. We live in a place where parking is very important in this part of the world. And so this was intended to be the floating building because we had the opportunity and the desire to have children protected from the hot sun and the wind. And by raising the building off the ground, it seemed to make lots of sense. It also provided for protected space for exhibitions to be shown in all types of weather. Simple, again, another simple exercise in volumetric forms, stacking together and creating indoor and outdoor spaces functioning together. Again, you see the volumetric developments. On the right, you see this notion about an protected outdoor space and a porte-cochere that's a result of it. So it began to continue on to this notion of site concepts, and I'm going to start by telling you that I've been working in sketchbooks virtually all of my life. I have just finished my 50th, number 50, and I've started my 51st sketchbook. They're 210 pages each. It takes anywhere from 60 days to 12 months to complete it, depending on projects that we have, depending on how inspired I feel at the particular time. So they're all dated. This is dated May 14, 2012. I was hot and heavy into the project development, in particular the focus on site development. And you'll see that going on. You'll also notice at the date 5/14/12, it's CAC/downtown-VZD Barstool. City Art Center was the original name of the institution before it was changed to Oklahoma Contemporary. VZD stands for a drugstore, VZ Drug, and I'd like to go in there at lunchtime and have a great sandwich and my favorite iced tea and sit on a bar stool and work in my sketchbook, which I did on May 14, 2012. So this is an exercise of going through trying to do site-related experimentation about where functions go, how the 1, 2, and 3, which are the functions of how the building might be added onto over a period of time. On the right-hand side, for some reason, I either ran out of paper or did something and I used a napkin. And then that group of very rough drawings, and I will tell you that all of my drawings that I do in my sketchbook, I basically call them my ugly drawings. And people say, well, why aren't they beautiful? And I say, because I don't do beautiful drawings. These are really drawings that identify possibilities and opportunities and design things. And you'll notice that there's 50% words and 50% images, if you will. So this was number 1 out of 16 site studies that I did in an effort to try to determine what the best solution was. I ended up on number 16, and you'll notice down at the bottom, the yellow blocks surround a courtyard, and this was an early possibility on how we would protect children being within this courtyard from disappearing or wandering off from the institution, and it was one very important step going forward. Again, I said earlier that we live in the land of cars in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is 620 square miles. Every place is 30 minutes away, and so that's just a part of our lifestyle. You can see that I did a second round of 13 variations on the site concepts. Ended up isolating the building itself. The parking ends up being on the east, which is the right. The railroad track and the track that you saw earlier with the big railroad, or the big train, the diesel train, is that view. On the left, I have actually taken out the road that separates Oklahoma Contemporary from the park. You'll see it come back in a moment, but this was really focusing on that. So the concepts, which is the next category, is really the architectural concepts, and this is when the building really starts to become something. Having been through early programming, having been through site-related experimentation, then it began to be a building. And the building in the middle is the orange building that you see begins to be the building that we ended up building, and to the north is the outdoor space. And this will all make more sense as we go through. But this drawing, if you look in the middle, is actually a projector projecting out to what would be basically a drive-in movie theater from an elevated deck. And we have built that to date, and a very exciting time to see that as we go into drive-in season. If you look on the upper right of this pair of sketchbook pages, you'll see the words folded light and folded panel. This was one of the first times that the concept of folding light or folded light actually occurred. Sometimes these things just come out of the blue, as all of us know when we're developing ideas. On the left-hand side over towards the bottom, it says random fins. And this was a development sketch trying to figure out how I would basically create a skin that would capture the light, fold the light, and allow the building to have this textural quality. And so what you're seeing is a series of galvanized metal fins of different shapes being screwed into the surface. It's a very important breakthrough moment. We all have those as we go through. You'll also notice on the right-hand side in the middle, you'll see a little folded wall area right there for an elevation. That folded wall became a very important piece of the puzzle because it is a folded skin being attached with folded panels that is trying to fold the light as it moves through its track. In 2013, really close to Christmas, I began to look at the possibilities of what the folded fins or random fins might look like. The random version at the top, number A, the random version variation, musical variation, and then the bottom being a uniform variation, roughly 4 inches deep. And then I continued on with this notion of what would it be like and how would you construct this? How would you put it together? How would you make these panels and literally attach them to the exterior building? And then I looked at number 8, which was, well, what if I wanted to have less than 100% coverage? What if I wanted 50% coverage and there was an opening? How would I attach that to the building? How would I do it? Why would I do it? Well, because of handrails. Handrails, you know, have to be a certain density, if you will, and I was starting to think about that at this early point. Again, details of corners on the lower right from 2015. We have some freestanding columns inside the building, and I didn't want them to just be round columns. How would I begin to articulate them? And that starts to be considered. We have a wonderful stair called the ceremonial stair that you'll see in a moment. I felt like that this really needed to be an experience, and so we took a fire stair and converted it to an accessible stair using special fire doors that actually automatically close when there's an event, but during the daytime they're open all the time. And so the stair becomes this place for artwork. There's going to be opera created and sung in the stair that you'll see in just a moment. It also was important that it was a place where great conversation might go on between artists or students or anybody there to see something new. So you're continuing to see this development. The upper right-hand says, how do you fold light, question mark. And so I'm really trying to ask myself these questions and figure out how I would do that as the skin continues to develop. Everything from the lights on the stair on the right are made from folded channels. The folded elements over on the left in the lower part are about how a column might be enclosed using folded metal panels. And then finally you get to basically 2014. This was the first real appreciation for the folded form of the building, literally going all the way around and creating this folded form, ultimately folding light. On the left-hand side, the element sticking out ends up being the lantern that you'll see, classrooms on the left, the entrance on the right, the blue rectangle is the elevator, the loading dock and so forth on the north side. And the north side is where we end up with the elevated deck that overlooks the great lawn that you'll see in just a moment. One interesting thing on the right-hand side, it says entry, and there's an E over there, which means east. That linear element was really the front canopy, and the canopy moved completely as the project evolved. So we then take that next step, which is to make spaces, usable spaces, with simple sketches. This is the green room areas. It includes toilets, it includes offices, it includes storage areas, and so forth, and it is continuing to become, we're really starting to become a building. The Architectural Committee, which I am deeply indebted to over a period of time, included this group, myself, James Pickle, Chris Casillas in the middle. He is our chairman. The director at the time, Liz Eichmann, is the director. Anyway, all of this group are really a part of making this building come together. We built 7 full-size mock-ups on a space next to our building in downtown Oklahoma City. The left one actually ends up being a corrugated shingle made in Nebraska. The center one is folding light that was chosen. That's why we're all standing in front of it. The right one is a variation of that, but it was done in white. And this one was chosen on this day and agreed to go forward. What also happened is that we went to the contractor's yard, Matt Thomas, and the fellow not in the blue shirt, that's Bill Yen from my office, but the right-hand fellow is Josh Livingston, and Josh and his company were responsible for fabricating the fins for us, and that's a very important moment in the history of the building. As you can see, it started out having corrugated metal and screw-attached elements, and we got smarter as we went through this, and finally ended up doing it as an extruded aluminum fin that you'll see in a moment. But this was a mock-up, kind of reminds me of my dad's farm equipment. But anyway, it was a very important start for us going forward. So I'd like to jump into construction at this particular moment and show what began to happen at this time. For 20 years, I have been photographing gloves. And I first saw construction gloves falling on the floor, or excuse me, falling on the ground, or falling on the floor inside a building under construction. And I was fascinated by it because of the whole idea that architecture wouldn't exist without construction people and craftsmen and people that can do things a whole lot better than I can do them. And probably most of you that's listening, not everybody, I understand that. But these became fascinating to me, and I've done about 5,000 photographs of gloves done by workmen, and my, in essence, homage to their work itself. So this really starts the construction process. This is the site as we begin to do excavation work. The job site sign is on the right, and we continue on. This is not my burial ground, I will promise you that. This is actually a location for the box that would go in the ground that would have the important drawings and history, time capsule, if you will, that will be opened up in 100 years, and I'll be there for that. And so if you're wanting to come to Oklahoma City, I look forward to seeing you then. Then obviously we continued on with corner points for survey work. This was grid line E. And then this is really why we're doing this. This is an example of a wintertime sunrise in Oklahoma, spectacular in every way. And this really is the focal point. And what I want to tell you about this is that Oklahoma is also known for the bombing in 1995. It's known for the Dust Bowl. It's known for the oil and gas industry being a seesaw. It is known for lots of things. Some of them are really good. Some of them are not so good. And we wanted to find a way to commemorate or say something about Oklahoma City that was really powerful and very positive. And we are celebrating the quality of the light and the color of the skies in Oklahoma. And this building is inspired by that very thing. Walking around on the site one day, as you can see, it's under construction. And I looked around and there was this box and it was filled with plumbing pipe, the PVC plumbing pipe. And they had written folding light on it. And I thought, holy cow, a plumber wrote the name of the building on a box full of plumbing. I thought that was fantastic. And so this has become one of my favorite photographs and everybody's favorite photograph because everybody began to call it folding light, even the plumbers. The steel obviously starts to go up. I'm really proud of Bill Yin for spotting and creating all of these locations that you see perforated in these giant wide flanges that allow the devices like fire protection and so forth to go through without doing an up and down around the beams. This was actually our first extruded aluminum mock-up. Here's the team below. It's Cody and myself, Matt Thomas, the contractor. The two fellows in the middle, including the pink shirt, is the fellows who made this material, including his guys on the right. So this is actually bolted to the side of his shop. This is the basically what's called dipped aluminum and the extrusions going on that would ultimately change the way the building is seen. This is, again, capturing the notion of the east or the sunrise coming up. The train is just below, just beyond where the sign in the building is to the east. But again, sort of a moment to imagine what would ultimately be coming. Wonderful steel work. I love working with iron workers and watching them do lots of things that I can't do. Topping out ceremony, it was a gray day, very windy, like most days are, and they were able to tie the tree to the top so it wouldn't blow off. The building continued, obviously under construction, dense glass. This is a 12-inch thick wall because we wanted something that was very energy efficient and sustainable. And so we've got lots of air in there. We've got insulation, certainly. And it gave us an opportunity to do a very, very responsible building along the way. This is our first two large sections of mock-up to go up on the building of the fins themselves. On the left was the first set, on the right is the second set, and the short version is the handrail, and you'll see that a moment here. But it also, what captured my attention here was the whole idea of in essence, the lantern casting its shadow over the random fins, and what an incredible shadow it created, and how the light, dark, shade, shadow, reflection all began to happen at one time. As it went further, it became clearer and clearer. In fact, I was so happy I had one of the fellows who was putting up all the aluminum come to me one day with this incredible look on his face, great joy, and he said, "Gosh, Rand, it's working." And I stopped for a moment and I thought, thank goodness it's working. I would be run out of town if it wasn't working, but it really did work, and you're going to see the results of that in a moment. At the very top of the roof edge, I'm sorry this slide is a little soft, we took the fins all the way up. We did not cover it with cap flashing because we wanted this notion to be a building that was continuing or reaching for the sky along the way. The lights start to go into the lantern. The lantern is a recognition for a very important donor along the way as you see this. you're looking to the east. What's particularly important, not only in its poetic name, Folding Light, but the whole idea that there is something driving this building, and what is it that would drive this building that would be really important. And the whole idea, frankly, was that the building needed to do three things. It needed to embrace its place. It's something I believe in philosophically. It's my home, and it's a very important thing. So embrace the idea of place. This is Oklahoma. How can we put this building in this place? This building, I can tell you, could not belong anywhere else. It belongs in Oklahoma City. Its purpose was to be an arts education facility. Its intention is to teach children and adults about the arts and how important they can be in their impact on all of us as we go through life, and those things that we acquire, that we understand and appreciate, that are beautiful along the way. And of course, the poetics is simply another word for the architecture as far as that is concerned. And so combining place, purpose, and poetics is what really makes Folding Light what it is today. Time for light. Blue-black begins to glow in the east, and minutes of magic begin. The light performs as it rakes the surface, washing the billet. Rain-screened fins allow the surface to capture color as the texture alternates shade, shadow, and bright. This is architecture as Folding Light. And virtually every project that I do, there is some word painting, which is my way of saying a description about the building before the building ever happens. And this is a wish or a dream come true. So as the sun begins to rise, this is what the fins begin to do. They begin to glow and glisten and change into shade, shadow, and reflection that you begin to see here. This is what's about to happen. It's in this particular instance, it's obviously a wonderful early morning Oklahoma sky that shows the orange clouds. As the clouds change and the wind blows the clouds through and the color of the sky continues to change, we're actually looking at the front door towards the east. These three of the four columns support the porte cochere. There's one column that is detached. This group of columns is symbolic of the ancient tall grass prairies that began in Canada and came all of the way to Oklahoma. In fact, it was called the Iron Forest. And the people that pioneered Oklahoma said it was near impossible to get through the Iron Forest as they continued to look into living and being in Oklahoma along the way. So, what is the fourth one? Why doesn't it touch? And I've had people say, Rand, you made a big mistake. Something's wrong. The structural guy missed it. The welder missed it. Well, that particular element represents the fact that an artist's view sometimes goes beyond that of being attached. That in fact, it is thinking ahead. It is reaching ahead. It is trying to be more than just that is in front of you. So the sun has come up over the horizon. That silver building becomes this brilliant and wonderful gold, drenching it in this color. And it really does, as the sun touches it from early morning, it really begins to be this notion of energy, the artistic energy that comes forward. To the right-hand side is the elevated deck. To the left is obviously the canopy. And then this is the detail of the building not touching the vertical. I will have to say that one of my pet peeves and most important details that we do on our projects is the cap flashing. And we laugh in our office that one of these days we'll figure out how to do the perfect cap flashing. And I feel like I'm getting really close here, but I don't know. I think there's still another one out there. After the sun comes up over the horizon, we get a little bit of violet and purple that starts to go on. The building begins to change again as the sun moves through the sky. The right-hand side is the elevated deck. And then, wow, something really bold happened. we got news that we were going to have snow in Oklahoma City. We haven't had snow in Oklahoma City in 4 years. We were going to have 4 inches in 4 hours. It was like, holy cow, this is going to be fabulous. We're going to have the opportunity to show 7 different conditions of the weather in Oklahoma in photographic point of view, and we did. And so this is what the building looks like in the snow. It's amazing. It changes to this incredible, beautiful soft gray. The skies go to white and gray, and the snow itself makes the site incredibly quiet. It was an amazing experience to watch that happen right in front of your eyes. Here again is another view of it. The little balcony is what I'm calling my Romeo and Juliet balcony. It's 18 feet off the ground. You get an opportunity to walk out and sort of see across the landscape, and you begin to see the building turning gray and white and a very pale blue. On that snowy day, the canopy itself, because the sky was white, became white as well, and this just magical quality starts to happen. What I'm showing you here is that there are basically 4 things that you want to watch or see when you are on this campus. One is the fins. One is the extruded fins that you're seeing here. One is the canopy that you've seen. One is the lantern that you've not seen yet. And another that I'll wait and let you be surprised by. What's particularly important, this shows you the extruded aluminum. It's 1/8 inch. It is extruded. It is in 9 different angles so that the building itself has this textural quality. What happens is that the metal expands and contracts. No surprise there. And so this is the expansion joint. But something I didn't see coming, and I'm thrilled that I didn't, but ultimately it happened, and that is that early mornings when it's been cold overnight and the sun comes up, the metal starts to expand. And when it expands, it has this crackling sound. And I realized at the time when I heard it for the first time was that the building was really alive, and that it was creating this example to say, man, listen, I mean, I'm alive. I'm really more than just this inanimate object. I am a breathing form. The lantern itself on the left is shown looking inside. You don't have access like this in reality, but in the left it was the snowy day. In the right, it's the sunny day. And you get obviously a change in color from white or gray to blue when the sun is out. The north side of the building in the wintertime is in the shade. You don't get an opportunity to have sun on the north side. It basically is a 180-degree version at our point in the world, and you're seeing a horizontal across there. That's the handrail. The 2 big square windows are the dance studio that you'll see in a moment. The 50% open fins at the roof are there to basically allow air circulation around the mechanical systems. We believe we've done some 35 arts-related institutions and buildings, and I like this notion that you're going to tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is that there's air conditioning units on the roof, and so the 50% fins actually let you see it or peek through it. It's not always visible, but sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. I took this a week ago. And I wanted you to see what's going on in the spring. Here we are about to be June, and this incredible change is going on, and this golden color and almost cantaloupe color and gray and powder blue begins to happen, and the building completely changes. Up close, the fins are seen as this textural element, one layer on top of another. The outdoor space has to have protection to basically provide opportunities to enclose and protect our young children outside, throwing a frisbee or creating artwork, or if we're having a concert. And we wanted to do a gate for that protection. We didn't want it to be opaque. We certainly didn't want it to be anything but an artistic element like the rest of the building. And so we did this wonderful 20-foot wide section from the pivot point so that basically the gate itself rotates. It's a pivoting gate. On the right, it shows you what the structure looks like inside of it using perforated metal. This is from one edge of the deck looking out over the lawn itself. The lawn had just gone down within a few days of this photograph, and so we're not quite fully green yet. Campbell Art Park is the space that you see beyond the Fins, and that was done in the teens before Oklahoma City really developed. In the foreground, you're seeing the handrail, you're seeing the Fins being exposed, and this is intentional so that people could see how the building is built. As the night comes into morning, the building actually goes from this deep, thick blue cloud. The building turns blue just like the sky. The lantern is burning and sort of speaking out that this is a creative place. The right-hand side, the sun is really beginning to come up, and you're seeing the color start to arrive. As the sun comes around in the southern atmosphere, what you're seeing is the building turning blue. The element that is the lantern actually is opaque. When there's no light inside of it, you really don't know that it's transparent. The sky color goes all the way across, creates shade and shadow and blue tones of every imaginable value. On the snowy day, there are three very important things. We're standing in the park. We're looking across at the building. On the left-hand side is the elevated deck. The short group, which is about 9 feet high of the 50% Fins, is created to basically create a sunscreen and a windscreen as the wind whips around the edges of the building. And the people that are out on the deck are not impacted by that at all. So this is midday. It snowed the night before. As the sun goes towards the horizon, it picks up the yellow glow of that. And then as it goes just below the horizon, it changes again and becomes something altogether different. The lantern really begins to glow. The sign comes on. This very beautiful element, including the silhouette of trees, begins to create something new as people pass by, coming and going in downtown. One very interesting thing I would mention, this is out on the deck, and we actually designed the building to create its own shadow. So this is on the north side of the building. The sun comes from the south, generally southeast and west, and we created a building that would create our own shade. And in Oklahoma, you need shade and a little bit of breeze to make it tolerable when it comes to heat. And so we did that. The building casts its own shadow, which is therefore that creates coolness. On the right is the lantern, the light fixture that is basically like a giant theater light. It lights the upper deck and also the outdoor lawn. This is a detail on the right of the windscreen on the west and the transparency of looking through it, on the right, and the transparency on the left. What also happens is that there's this piece of art that's created right before your eyes as the sun comes through to the west and southwest, and it creates these, in essence, reflections and shadows happening simultaneously. Every time I look at these, I think of chalk. The moon also has an impact on the building itself, and we have wonderful moon rises, we have full moons, and this just shows the impact of what the moonlight does to the building itself. We come back around to the building. This is at sunrise. This canopy is actually an opportunity to look through and frame the Devon Tower, which is to the left. It's our largest energy company in the state of Oklahoma. As you move around the building, this is the southwest corner. The lantern is in front of you. This is really showing the extruded aluminum at its most pure form. On the right is the screen for the fourth floor office spaces. The southwest is the strongest light that we get and very hot. And so we created this screen to be able to protect a wonderful bay window, as we call it. Another view as the sun is moving across. This is actually an early morning shot, and again, it shows you the change. The south elevation, someone said, why are there no windows? And the reason there's no windows is because this is very important artwork. It's priceless. We can't have degradation going on by having the artworks themselves. And so it was very important that we create an artistic solution, an artistic representation of what's going on inside. You can see again the change. It's going from gray to pink to gold. The left-hand side is the sunscreen. This is the one of the Romeo and Juliet balconies. Mackenzie, our photographer's assistant, went up and posed for us, which is really great. You can see the tower, and on the left is the underneath part of the balcony as well. It's you're 18 feet off the ground. The views are incredible. There's no high rises nearby. It's a wonderful experience. Very quickly, this gives you a sense of the floor plans, what they actually look like. This level over on the right is the main entry. Number 2, which is just inside of it, is the lobby. Over on the left is the classrooms going from pre-K to teens. The center section is obviously core with children's toilets, public toilets. The north part, or the top of the plan, is the basically the storage areas and where art is taken out of crates and that sort of thing. On the right-hand side, upper right-hand side, is the cafe kitchen. On the lower right-hand side is the cafe itself, and the space for the shop is in the middle of the building. So you come in the front door. This is our tour beginning to be to the interior of the space, and you see that the southwest area of the building is glass, and so we did the 50% open fins there to control that sun. You check in at the counter. You have these 2 screens up on the wall that happens to be the logo for the institution, but there's something different here, and that is this white on white panel, and it's a very important panel, and you'll see as we go through it. Here's Mackenzie sitting in the lobby, and the wonderful light coming through in the southeast, which is a cool time of the day. This is a view looking back towards the reception desk, and again you see the view of the screens themselves, and then you see this panel again. And as we began to realize that that this was an arts institution, this is not a restaurant, this is not a gift shop, this is not a retail environment, this is an arts institution. And we had some very lively discussions with our client's representative, and we wanted something on the ground level that would have art in it, right? I mean, it's an art institution. How do you know it's an art institution if you don't have a piece of art? So we had this very lively discussion, and she wanted to basically not have any art. And I just said, this is ridiculous. We can't do that. And so the compromise was they did put a piece of artwork, which you'll see in a moment. But more importantly, this really represents this notion that we are living in the 21st century. This is 2020. These screens are important because it's a part of our life. But this panel behind them is the result of the most beautiful proportion known to man, which is the golden section. And so that panel is 1 unit to 1.61803 proportional, and it was created by this guy right here. And I'm sure that all of you know this guy. I'm not sure if I should tell you his name or not, but so I'm going to kind of leave that aside for a minute, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. The golden section was done in 45 BC, and this is the mathematical formula for it, which was used in this building. This is the cafe over as you're looking towards it. One of my favorite little things is this piece of mirror in the middle that lets you actually see behind you and see what's over your shoulder and where you've been, if you will. This big beam across here ultimately ended up with sliding glass doors. The shop is basically works that are being created on site of all kinds. The left one, which is Olafur Eliasson, was not created on site, but it gives you the idea of artworks being not only in the gift shop, but being exhibited as well. This is the lobby looking towards what's called the Creative Lounge. You're seeing the reflections of the entrance, and maybe more importantly, the artwork on the left. This artwork, if any of you are musicians, would recognize the name Flaming Lips. The Flaming Lips are a well-known rock and roll band. They have global experience. They're from Oklahoma City. They're all friends of ours, and these are words from one of their compositions. We're in the pre-K area. Since this is an arts institution, we're seeing kids at pre-K period in here learning about artwork for the first times in their lives. None of the spaces are rectangular. They have no 90-degree corners in them. The ceiling is exposed. The decking is perforated metal. The lighting is a series of linear elements that don't touch and basically duplicate the shape of the room. The cable trays on the left and right represent the fact that this space will change over a period of time, and it allows us to put electrical and data in here without having to go into the walls. I'm going to skip over to the teen area. Those teenagers, you know how difficult they are. And so they were given the opportunity to put their favorite graphic up, which is the one on the right. And the one on the left I found hidden under the counter, which is a series of balloons that they are doing artworks out of. This is the teens area. You know, work counters, of course. My favorite thing is the picture of the truck outside. They were doing paving, thought it was perfect. The building is there for people with any number of disabilities. The building is very thoughtful and comfortable from that particular point of view. The second floor, number 10 at the bottom, is the large gallery. It's 8,000 square feet. The offices, or the educational offices, are kind of in the center and to the left. Number 6, which is our giant art elevator, remains there. And then the second floor is also the access point, which is number 22, and kind of the striped deck. That's the overlooking deck to the north space. The gallery spaces, we have a series of rolling walls that allow the shape of the room to change. I'm going to go back one. Over on the right is a triangular shaped stair. And instead of just throwing away an opportunity like most fire stairs are, we have two. The left one is not quite as cool as the right one, but the right one is that really speaks clearly about the opportunity to grow and change and climb and reach for something bigger and better. And so this space is really created as an homage to M.C. Escher, as if you were climbing in this forever winding stair going up. And this is the same stair, two different photographs as you go up. And what happens is that you have this wonderful experience, and the idea is to make the stair more pleasing and interesting for students and adults to engage in, as opposed to just a typical stair that is boring and uninteresting. So what we have planned for the opening of the institution, which we'll talk about in a moment, is that it's going to have opera performed from the top to the bottom inside the ceremonial stair. The stair has handrails of polycarbonate and LED lights and very simple painted steel. Once you get to that second floor level, you end up coming out of the elevator into a small gallery, which is what Shadow on the Glare is an installation going on. The artwork, as you can see, meanders down adjacent corridors. There's art all around you in different scales. The Learning Gallery, and this is an example of what goes on right now. These are actually photographs that I did, and my sketchbook's on the right, that you'll see a little bit more here in a moment. And this is basically kicking off the idea that these works are works that were showing process as the building was being designed. And so these photographs about light and the use of light are there to encourage others to do the same thing. These are my sketchbooks not under construction. They are being shown. I worked in 14 different sketchbooks during this period of time, and you have the opportunity for students to come over and be inspired from the fact that they can color, they can draw, they can create things that might ultimately become buildings. You go into the main gallery. This is Bright Golden Haze, which is the name of the exhibition that's up at this moment. It's the 3 first words of the Broadway show, Oklahoma. The work showing over there is by Olafur Eliasson that you saw a little bit later. What you see is the building form, the folded form, is actually the outside wall and the inside wall are the same shape. And the other walls that are here are actually movable and mobile walls that were added to allow new artworks to be included in the space. Robert Irwin on the left, as you can see, this is one of the spaces with a wonderful holographic piece of artwork. A couple of things I would share with you as architects is the perforated metal deck has really worked beautifully as an acoustical project or acoustical material. All of the ductwork in the primary spaces is fabric, and so there's no breeze or blowing air through the space at all. All of the track lights follow the undulation of the folded form of the outside. This is Villarreal's moving LED fixture that's in one of the gallery spaces. This is as if there had never been an exhibit. This is the raw forms in the spaces themselves. You're seeing the ceiling, you're seeing the fabric duct, you're seeing the LED lights, you're seeing the walls as they are today. And it is in essence getting ready for the next exhibition. Our ceiling heights are 18 feet floor to floor on each of the floors, and that's why we get a wonderful volume. We're back to the second floor. The handrails are giving this wonderful reflected quality from the sunlight, and you're seeing the transparency. You go to the third floor. The third floor, as you get off the elevator number 5 or number 3, you come into a pre-event space. Cocktails, music, and that sort of thing is in space number 2. To the lower right is the spaces for actors, meaning green room and that kind of thing. Upper left is dance space. Lower left is the black box theater. So you move up the stairs again. This is a couple of details, obviously, of the stair as you proceed up and down. As you arrive on this floor, there is this wonderful kind of open element that is color changing, or has the opportunity to be color changing, and it's done there as a celebration. If you were going to celebrate a Valentine's Day with your favorite person, the institution could make sure that you had red light there doing that. Or Seth, if your favorite color was violet, we could show your favorite color as you come up and actually move into the space itself. So it's there to celebrate time and events. You come off of the elevator, you come to this space. This is the pre-function space I was telling you about. And then you walk into the theater, and you don't expect a 2-story black box theater on the 3rd floor. If you'll just focus on the right-hand side for a moment, this is the black box theater that's really not black. It's navy blue, gives a much better feeling. There's a wonderful catwalk around, and then there's an upper level mezzanine that works here. On the left is the catwalk. And one of the things that we did is that we wanted to create an experiential space. This is not just a theater, but because of the institution's goals, it had to be a place for the Rotary to meet. It had to be a place for a special anniversary. It had to be a place for a special party of some kind. And so we needed both a ceremonial light fixture as well as something that would be called house lights. And if you know much about theater, you know that house lights, you turn those on so that you can scrape the gum off the floor and sweep up the popcorn. And so we felt like that we had great success by putting a 40-foot diameter circular LED light in here, which we call the chandelier, that not only allows us to clean up the popcorn and gum, but it also creates this wonderful experience, if you will, as an artistic space. This is adjacent to the Teatro Theater. Teatro is very important American Indian woman who wrote and danced early on and is very much a namesake in Oklahoma. These are the big windows looking out to the north, to the horizon in Oklahoma. As you can see, we have wonderful horizons. And Mackenzie is over here giving a sense of scale. Again, the metal deck, the lighting, and the opportunity to see as far as you can imagine. What happens is as the sun goes down, the room actually changes color. You're seeing that happening on the left. On the right, you're seeing off to the western horizon. The fourth floor, which is the top floor, number 11 in the lower right-hand corner is the collaborative spaces where the staff works. In the upper corner is the same thing. You're seeing the ceremonial stair, the triangular stair. Over in the lower left is the Toyota Theater. It's open because that's the second floor, and there are 67 chairs that go around it for specialty opportunities for mezzanine viewing, if you will. The workspaces look like this. This is the bay window that I mentioned earlier. It's all a big collaborative workspace. They had never done anything like this before, and showing them an architect's office was sort of a revelation. We have this wonderful opportunity to sit and look out the bay window to the right, which is a view towards downtown, which is what you're seeing on the left through the fins themselves. I like this because it shows you the space that's behind you and the space that's beyond you. You eat lunch here, you talk to your friends, all of that. And then this is Eddie Walker's office. He's the executive director. I don't know how he does it, but he sits on this ball on the left. I tried it, and you certainly don't want to know what happened to me, but he's really good at it. The other thing that makes his office really special is the fact that if you look through this window straight ahead of you, you see a little pointy building, and that happens to be the state capitol in Oklahoma City. And it's a wonderful view, gives you an opportunity to, again, have a sense of our community. Now we're about to go down. This is the MC Escher stair rotating and moving downward through the lights, and soon to be opera. This is an aerial view of the building on its site downtown. It's at the top of the screen. You're seeing the outdoor deck, the elevated deck, and then the great lawn below that. On the left, just sort of across from the building, is basically what's called the studios building. And you saw this when we had the train shot, in that this is a 1910 warehouse, is basically what it is. And we changed, instead of building it as an addition to the main building, we did it as a renovation of an existing building. The park is on the right. This is the flub up from the survey crews coming together, and it became our park. So interesting enough, this building on the upper left, which is the basically our studios building, was a building where they made light bulbs. Who would have known in the 1910s that a building that made light bulbs would be sort of reincarnated as Oklahoma Contemporary, called Folding Light, and it would celebrate light in every imaginable way. It's amazing. This is what the space looks like. We added these canopies for sun control. On the on the right-hand side, you actually see chimneys from the outdoor kilns, if you will. These are very special kilns you'll see in just a moment. And these are for artists to go out and enjoy and appreciate the outdoors without being in the hot sun. So the building was basically a timber building like this. We added some skylights. All of you probably know what solitubes are, and that's the glowing aluminum material on the left. You see the original masonry that is exposed on the right, and this is the weaving studio. And a particularly important thing that we did here is that in appreciation for the weaving studio, the brick building outside the front door, right next to the weaving studio, is made of woven bricks. And I couldn't resist the woven bricks with snow on their edges. Scott McDonald, a photographer, said, "Rand, go down there and clean the table." And so I'm the guy in the middle cleaning, and Mackenzie's on the left, and the potter is further on the left. And this shows you the lead doors that were used to load and unload off of the train, which is just beyond those big windows. Obviously, this is the pottery studio. This is the electric kilns on the south side of the building. A couple of details of how we scab together masonry and metal to keep this building from falling down. Outside on this outdoor deck, you see the two custom-made gas-fired kilns. The amount of material that goes in and out of this, as you can see, David, moving it is so heavy that it has to be on a railroad track kind of device. And I'm sure many of you have done this before. It's an amazing experience. It gets to be 1,200 degrees, among other things, 3,500 degrees, that fires the clay for all of the ceramic artworks. In the end, I hope that everybody in the audience believes the same thing I do, and that is that architecture is really a million details. It's not just a big building. It's really a big building made of a million smaller pieces. And I wanted to just bring a few things to your attention that shows a little bit about how we approach detailing in buildings. This is basically the donor recognition plaque, and instead of just having something that we would screw to the wall, we created a folding aluminum panel. This is basically about 10 by 17 inches, and engraved the people's names on it. But the wonderful thing is that they become a part of the building design as their names are reflected on the left. My colleague Bill Yin, he noted and placed and drew every single one of these perforations through these beams all throughout the building. It was immaculate and beautifully done so that there's nothing below it. The duct sock or the fabric duct is on the right there, so you can see that coming and going. One of my favorite details is this. The two-foot diameter access panels are on the right. There's a mechanical unit just above that, and we were inspired by, guess what, the little dot to the left, which is the fire protection plate. As you go down the corridor towards the classrooms, there was a space and a desire to show artworks in an environment where they were protected. And so we designed this really simple thing. The shelves are made by an incredible company that does extruded aluminum shelves. This just felt perfectly right for this building, and so we did a combination of millwork and this extruded aluminum shelf. We feel like that the arts experience should start before you ever get in the building. So if we can create a building that will grab your attention, which we hope we did, and as you park your car and start walking towards the building, there is a quote, and a quote from John F. Kennedy from the 1960s, early 1960s, and it's his State of the Union message about how important the arts are to our lives and the well-being of our children. And so we have replicated that quote in the concrete. Again, one of my favorite details, this is our pivoting gate that is certainly in keeping with the main building. Again, the detail, this is how you get in the front entrance. We've got card key access and others. Here we are. We have a light fixture. We have a stainless steel column that allows the artwork to be a John McCracken piece of art, if you will, at the front door. And I have to admit something to you here. This is my favorite photograph and maybe my favorite detail in the entire building. And it shows the reflections from the horizon. It shows the folding fins, the folding light, if you will. But more importantly, what this really is that it's the overflow drains from the roof. And 90 feet in the air, the overflow drains allow the water to come in. They flow down through this. We cut these small slits in the skin at the bottom, and the overflow water comes through this. To me, this is architecture at the highest possible level. We did a donor recognition event on March the 13th. Everybody remembers March the 13th. It was the day that the world shut down for COVID-19 virus. 200 of us were inside this building having a great time celebrating the opening of the building, and the opening never happened. So this building has never opened to the general public. We're hoping to do that here in the next couple of months. So the proof is in these two last images. This is an early morning. The sun is about to come up. When I tell somebody I once saw the reflections being this incredible pink, purple color, they say, no, that's impossible. It can't happen. And I say, well, it can happen. I have photographs of it. And it happened because of this. And this is really what Oklahoma is all about, our great skies, our wonderful colored light. And we hope that, that the building is justified in being a very special place, and really does encourage people to come see us and imagine what our big skies are like. That's all I have, Seth, Kyle. Thank you so much. I want to say one more thing. I'm sorry, I didn't flip the page. Oh no, I've got 20 more pages. Just kidding. What I'd like to do is I want to say in conclusion that we're excited that the building is going to open soon. We'd love for you to come to Oklahoma City and enjoy it. I'm happy to buy you a cocktail along the way. We believe and are convinced that you will come and leave inspired about what you see and what the place is like and all the great people. And more importantly than that, I want to say, please thank Principal Bill Yin and Associate Cody Pastolka, who were the project managers of this project that really made this building happen. So now I really am finished, Seth. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody in the audience that I can't see, but I hope is there.
So thank you, Rand. Thanks for sharing all this. This has actually been a great presentation. What a great project and organization to focus on too. When you had said you really wanted to just focus on one project, start to finish, that's a leap of faith, but this really has a lot of depth to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, with this new format of the lecture, we've been trying to keep the spirit of the in-person lecture live. We have the chat area, you know, any of the 60 plus attendees that are here today, you can type a question in there. But again, to try and get back to the spirit of the lecture, if technology allows us to, and that's a big if, I'm hoping this works, we're going to supplement the Q&A by inviting a couple people in to join us. I've asked Frank Dittenhafer of Murphy and Dittenhafer Architects, Chris Dawson of Chris Dawson Architect, Kyle Soyak, our president, who was on earlier, of Tono, and Jerry Hershey, he's a local artist out of Lancaster, to join us in a small conversation. Jerry is providing a non-architect and artist perspective to the conversation. While Michelle is going through the process, and I guess I'd also like to thank Michelle at this point. Michelle is our staffer for the AIA. She's been working behind the scenes, making sure everything goes off without a hitch. Without her, pretty much none of this would have happened. So thank you, Michelle, for that. While she's working behind the scenes, unmuting, I guess I can kind of kick off the Q&A with a question of my own. When I'm doing work, music is critical to what I'm doing. I can't focus on anything without the music going in the background. And you brought up music several times throughout this presentation, whether it be the musical rhythm of the folding light planes, whether it be the reference to the Flaming Lips. Yeah, do you have a fallback that you keep going to? And is there any inspiration and collaboration that happens between you and music?
Well, and it's sort of interesting that my wife would be listening to this, because she would describe the answer when if you said, Rand, are you musical? And she would say, you know, when he sings, all the dogs in the neighborhood howl. And so the answer is, I have no musical skill whatsoever. But I will tell you that I love music, and I think that there is a direct relationship between music and architecture, music and art in every sense of the word. With me today is Joseph Williams. Joseph has been in our office for a long time, and he is a music aficionado, and he likes heavy metal. And I've learned to like heavy metal over a period of time listening to his appreciation for that. And so I have an expanded appreciation for that along the way.
That's awesome.
To answer your question maybe a little more carefully, Seth, we have music in our office every day, and there are moments, I'm sure, when people say, you know, can we not have music today? Well, yes, but not for very long. We've got to have music. And so it's just a part of our life. I've listened to music since college in the studio and that sort of thing. And in fact, last night, Jeanette and I watched a documentary on the Hollies, which are a 1960s band with Graham Nash in it. It was just spectacular. I would highly recommend it.
Good. Michelle, are any of the other panelists able to join us for the conversation?
So Seth, can you hear me? It's Chris.
Absolutely.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Rand. Really beautiful building, really stunning. I'm sure excited for the public to be able to explore it. One of the things in the presentation that struck me were the number of mock-ups that you did to kind of work through the design ideas. Was this, and you mentioned that you had done, I think, close to 36 other arts institutions. Was this unusual? And are you also doing study models before you get to full-on mock-ups? Could you talk through that process a little bit? And the sketchbooks are gorgeous and a great jumping off point. But I'm curious about the next steps.
Sure. Thanks very much. Part of the reason why the mock-ups were so important, especially the full-scale ones, is because we were going into territory that none of us had ever been in before. And the good thing is that our chairman, Chris Cassee, and the committee were willing to do that. And we went through this process. We had a fabulous contractor, a company called Smith & Pickle Construction. Josh and his group from Artform did all of the fin work and the additional help for us to get it right. It was a process, and everybody went along in a beautiful way, working together to try to find the best possible solution that we could find. And we believe that we did that, and everybody contributed to that process. So did we build models? We built fewer models and did more computer-generated 3D things than we did anything else. And then when it came time to actually do the mock-ups, we were ready for that. We knew how to go about doing that. Our contractor was ready. Our suppliers were ready. Josh was ready and his group to get started. And as you can see, it started as galvanized sheet metal and ended up as extruded aluminum. And couple of interesting facts that you might enjoy is that there are 38 miles of aluminum fins, 38 miles. There is enough fins to create 18,000 pieces of metal that they ended up putting up each by hand. It's a lock joint kind of thing that allows them to expand and contract with weather. But a really thrilling thing, and as I said earlier, when the gentleman came up to me as they started to install them and said, "Rand, it's really working," you can see why I was relieved, to say the least. And so it's been a great experience. It was the right thing to do, and we would do it again in the next project. So it's a part of the evolution. We in our office like to design everything. As you can tell, the donor elements, the pedestal coming into the front door, all of those things we believe are design or a part of the architecture. They're not details. They are a part of the architecture. And so we feel like that all of them should have a consistency. Hopefully I answered your question.
Definitely. Thank you.
Hey, Rand. Yeah, Rand, this is Frank Dittenhafer. I also thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I can't wait to visit Oklahoma City and visit the building. I think I'll have to spend the entire day there so I can see it at sunrise in every hour or so, and at sunset. That's just very engaging. It'd be a phenomenal experience. But I wanted to ask you talk a little bit more about the process. Like many of us, I mean, you thoroughly studied the site context, all the programmatic investigations, all the iterations of how it could be assembled and layered and horizontal and vertical. And again, I appreciate your ugly sketchbooks, which I think are beautiful. And you just mentioned you did a lot of computer and digital representation investigations. I don't think we saw any. But anyway, my question is, the process isn't necessarily linear. It can go on forever, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. And at a point, you hit on, folding light. So how do you know in the process, investigating all the different aspects, this is what it wants to be? I mean, what tests do you use? Was it something else before folding light that didn't work?
I mean, it's a great question, and it's a part of the process that I use. It's about sketchbooks, it's about writing poetry, it's about looking for something that describes the building before it ever happens. That's why I work in a sketchbook. I have to understand this building in written form or in word form before I ever understand it as an architectural form. And that's why 50% of my sketchbooks are words and 50% are images. It's that search. It's a relentless search. And I've done it enough to know when I'm getting close. But the other thing that's important about this is that we had a budget. This is a very inexpensive building, and you may or may not believe that, but that's really true. And we had that from the beginning. We had to build an economical building. And part of the value of that was stacking it. We could actually save money by doing that. We could actually save money by using the existing 1910 warehouse for the studios building rather than doing the addition onto the main building. And it just, each one of those points of reference took us in a certain direction. And we couldn't afford a building full of windows. We couldn't afford a project like that. And so we kept thinking about texture and skin and something that had a life of its own kind of thing. And could we inspire people to do that? And so, as all of us know that are on this call, you just keep banging away at it. You keep looking for a solution that seems to do all of those things. And then once you make that decision, it continues to flow for you. And that flow really does make it easier as time goes on. Bill Yin likes to say that one of the things that makes our office unique is the fact that when you start on a project, you stay on the project to the end. You are not pulled off. You don't work on another project, you work on this project. And so Bill Yin and Cody worked on this project for several years, if you will, making this building come together. We believe in that kind of consistency and conversation. And there wasn't a day go by that we weren't talking about the building, how we could improve it and what we would do. Bill and I would have this conversation, and he'd say, Rand, I'm thinking about this corner, and I think it could be better, and what if we did this, and what if we did that? And that's the way the process worked, truly a team and collaborative affair from that standpoint. And in the end, you can't remember who designed what. It's all a contribution.
That's great, thanks.
Jerry, are you with us? And would you like to offer an artist's perspective? All right, not hearing from Jerry, I'll interject one of the questions from Rachel, one of our AIA members. She said that she loves the blue instead of the black box theater, and she's wondering, is there a story behind the color decision?
There really is a story. There was lots of conversation. Jeremiah Davis is our artistic director, and he was actually born near Tulsa, which is 90 miles from here. But he went on to New York to study theater and the arts, and we were fortunate enough to recruit him to come back to Oklahoma City and be the artistic director of Oklahoma Contemporary, and he's doing that today. Interestingly enough, he has been in probably more theater spaces than any of us that are on this call. And as we began to talk about that, he said, Rand, have you ever done anything besides black in a black box theater? And I said, well, actually we have. A decade ago or something, we did a experimental theater at the University of Oklahoma. And he said, how did it turn out? And I said, it was really great because black can be kind of a foreboding quality. When you get people in a theater, yes, you're looking at drama and you're looking at scary things sometimes, but you're also looking at joyful things. And in the conversation that Jeremiah and I had over a long period of time of gestation, he said, I think it should be something else. And will you put some colors together and we'll paint them all on the wall and look at them and try to decide what's the best one. And so we did exactly that. I think we did nine color variations, and ultimately his decision was that this navy blue would be the right thing, that darkened, the room does what it's supposed to do. Brighter, it has a quality of experiment. It has a quality of friendship and joy to it. It's the color of the sky, obviously, at some point during the day. And it all just kind of fell together as we talked about that.
That's great. Non-building related question. I can't help but observing the car hood behind you. How's that fit into, yeah, the car hood behind you. How's that fit into your office culture?
I have a brother that's basically a decade older than I am. And I was the snot-nosed little brother that he was forced to drive around with because my mom said, take your little brother with you. And he would go, oh, I don't want to take him with me. He just gets in the way. And my mother would say, no, you need to take him. And so I would get in the back, and he would turn around and look over the bench seat from the 1956 Ford green over white. And he would look at me and he'd say, if you do anything stupid, I'll kill you. And so I figured he was serious about that. I had the opportunity to spend time with him drag racing, and many times in scary, very, very scary conditions. And so I was around him and cars a lot as a kid. And then I went on to build model cars when I was 7 to about age 18, believe it or not, probably too long. And along the way, I got really interested in it. And I got really interested in great paint jobs and wonderful detail, and which I think probably led me to my fetish about details today. Well, in in high school, it was time for me to take my driver's test and all those kinds of things. I did, passed it. I took it, by the way, in a 1966 Mustang, which was really great. It's my dad's car. And then not long after that, we found this, in essence, a hot rod, or the potential of a hot rod, a 1964 Chevy Nova. And it was bright fire engine red. We did Krager mags. We had 4-speed Hirsch shift. We had an 8-track tape player. Nobody in the audience knows what that is, but probably me. It was red leather interior, and it was one hot car. And a friend of mine had a 57 Chevy, and we would do rolling start drag races all the time. And so flash forward several decades, and I met a custom car, hot rod car painter named Charles Armstrong. And I just love the guy. He has a 1953 Buick. It is 3 inches off the ground. It is a spectacular specimen. So I got this new interest in cars again, and I went to see him, and I said, Charles, I'm not sure what to do here. I'd like to buy my 64 Chevy back or have another one like it, but my wife's not going to let me do that, and I understand, and it's probably too dangerous and all that. And he said, well, maybe we do a piece of it. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. And so I started thinking about it, and I said, Charles, could we find a 1964 Chevy Nova hood? And he said, sure. And so we did that. And it was, he painted it bright red, and that's what it is to date. And it is a piece of artwork in this space, and everybody that comes into the office asks the same question. And it has such meaning to me. It's about speed, it's about craft, it's about color, it's about all of those kinds of things that have impacted the architecture that we do today.
I'm actually so glad I asked that question now. I was considering not saying anything. Chris, Frank, Kyle, any of you have another question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, Rand, I'd like to just follow up. I really appreciated hearing that as far as museums go, the budget was relatively modest, and we know museum budgets can go out into the next galaxy. And it sounds like that in the end was, and part of the process was sort of an asset. It appeared from the slides and hearing you talk that a lot of the project was built relatively conventionally. You weren't necessarily doing a lot of gymnastics, and you sort of were choosing, where to really customize and and really craft something. Obviously, the exterior skin. Just like to hear talk a little bit more about, conventional construction, off-the-shelf products, and how you choose to and where and how much to depart from that.
It's a great question. When I started my company at age 27, I started with James Pickle, who you saw a little bit earlier, college classmate, friend of mine. As James and I like to say, we didn't have any money, we were not handsome, and we didn't have any work. And the two of us started by hitting on our fraternity brother friends and people in the community that we had learned to, that we'd grown up with or that we had met along the way. And so from the very beginning, we did actually graphic design in the office. Nobody would even trust us with a building. So we were doing letterheads and logos and posters and things like that because we had no work. And then we got our first toilet remodel, and we got our first house project, and we got each time something better. So we literally started from the very bottom and built a company based on a true love of the passion, a true love and passion of the process itself, and really trying to make our own mistakes along the way. And we've done exactly that. So from that standpoint, we never had any money. We never had projects with giant budgets. And so we got really inventive. And the only thing that we had going our way was the fact that we had great ideas. And those ideas became the currency that we have. When we interview for a project or work with a client, our currency is about creative thought processes, finding ways to build something really great with very little money. And we've learned to do that and really kind of pride ourselves in that we can create something beautiful with a small budget. And my friend Neil Frankel, who's an architect in Chicago, said, Rand, you're the only one that I know that can embrace not having a budget and make something really good happen from it. And I look at that as a challenge, just like everything else is a challenge. How are we going to build Oklahoma Contemporary as an economical building? Because this is basically a nonprofit. How do we do that by using sheer brain power, if you will, to try to get to something? And so using conventional construction, having our friends that are craftsmen come in and say, Rand, the cheapest way to build that is to do this. Turn it upside down or turn it right side up or something. And we would think that was really cool. Okay, well, we'll turn it upside down if we can save money doing that. And it has led us to this process.
That's great. Thank you.
We'll do one more shout out to Jerry Hershey. Have you figured out how to unmute yourself yet? If not, any other questions from the other panelists?
This is Kyle here. I'd just like to add one additional question. I mean, you've talked a lot about how architecture is in the details. You've mentioned it a lot during your presentation, but also in these follow-up questions. And then, of course, you called out your favorite photo, the one of the overflow drains, which is surely unique in a lot of situations, but it's one of those details that often gets overlooked, specifically with such a unique facade treatment. At what stage are you looking at those details and how they integrate into the facade?
From the very beginning. I mean, once you start to create the skin of the building, we all know the challenges that we face, unbelievable challenges. And starting with galvanized sheet metal and translating that ultimately into extruded aluminum was the conversations between myself and Bill Yin and the contractor and Josh and his team at Artform, truly a team effort in a way to try to find a solution that we could afford, that would be artistically beautiful and something that we would be proud of by the time we finished with the project. And so it continues to be that drives the decision-making process. Now, I'd like for you to repeat that to make sure that I've answered it fully. Can you repeat the question?
I was just saying, at what stage are you looking at those details? And
right.
As you coordinate with all your other consultants on projects, how do you get as well? How do you get them on board to understand that and not do it in sort of the conventional way?
What I can tell you is Bill Yin is a magician. And this is one of the finest architects I've ever had the pleasure to work with and around, and I've had that pleasure for 40 years. It's the classic where you can complete each other's sentences. We are designing every day, every moment, every opportunity we have to work on an expansion joint, to work on a detail about how the drain works. I mean, every one of those we see as opportunities to make the project better, to feel like that we've truly been architects and designed a building at every level. And we love that. I mean, what's more fun than designing an overflow drain? I don't know of anything any more fun than that, except a cap flashing, which I haven't quite figured out yet, but sooner or later we will. And the point is, every one of these is an opportunity to do something great, and they are all architecture. And the notion from students coming out of school thinking that they don't want to write specs and they don't want to do details, they're missing an opportunity. And we encourage young people in our office to get waist deep in the details, because that's really where the architecture exists. Saarinen knew that. Ando knows that. I mean, all of the greats really do appreciate and understand what it's like to do that. So it's just a part of the process. And as I said earlier on, we didn't have any money for big, bold moves. All we could do was to concentrate on the small details of things that we thought were really prideful, and in the end, really was a function of our craft.
So Jerry didn't figure out how to unmute himself, but he did send through a couple of typed questions here.
Okay.
Reading from Jerry's question, he said, you mentioned Robert Irwin at one of the installation shots. Lawrence Welchner's book, Seeing is Forgetting the Name of the Thing One Sees, is one of his favorites. Do you have any touchstone books that you would like to comment on?
Oh, goodness. I guess I would just say that if I had to choose who my favorite architect was through history, it would be Le Corbusier. And I felt like that he was the combination of architect and artist that was really inspiring to me. I've grown on to appreciate Donald Judd's work and all the great minimalists, including Agnes Martin. It just goes on and on and on. And I tend to gravitate to those people who are really about details and are really about creating buildings from parts that are using the least possible. Richard Serra, great work. It's that group that I tend to identify with along the way. And people say, well, what architects do you really follow or emulate? And I said, I don't do that very well. And the people that I follow are really the artists. And I really think that the artists, in essence, really understand and appreciate space better than architects do. We started doing interiors before everybody else was doing interiors because no one would allow us to do anything else. And we've gotten really good at it. And so we don't do a project without doing interiors. Therefore, the interiors and the building itself become one cohesive response, if you will. And we think that's the only way to do buildings the right way. So it's all of those things combining to be that. Has there been influence from Dan Flavin? I think that what I appreciated from Flavin was the fact that you could take a fluorescent light and put a GAM tube over it and change its color and create an atmospheric shift that I'd never seen before. The same thing with Judd and the concrete pieces, or his wonderful minimalist things. One of my favorite artists is a gentleman who does artworks about the human body. Anyway, the point is that my influences probably come more from the artists than they do from the architects.
Jerry had one other question here I wanted to bring up. Why do you consider the project only possible in Oklahoma City? And he's noting that he's seen awesome sunsets in other parts of the country. And why do you feel like it's so deeply rooted there?
I guess because I started to try to find a way to create a portrait of this place, to create a building that fit in this place. And this building, in my opinion, couldn't be anywhere else for lots and lots of reasons. And that to me made the building really about its place, its purpose, and its poetics. And that was really important to me. We've worked in London. Our project in London fit London. It didn't fit Oklahoma City. And our project in Marfa, Texas fit Marfa, Texas. It didn't fit Oklahoma City. And so I really believe that there is an opportunity for new creative thinking from architects if they will think more carefully about the place they are building, where they are building. And that is very, very important. And if you do that, it's like you have a brand new and exciting opportunity to design something you've never designed before. And that comes from its place. It comes from the artists of that region. It comes from the light of that region. It comes from the thunderstorms. It comes from the rain and whatever it is. You can make a design concept come from the unique features in a particular place. And this building is particularly satisfying to me because I think I captured Oklahoma City for the first time in my life.
That's a great explanation. Chris, Frank, Kyle, any other questions you'd like to add in?
Nothing from me here. Just a big thank you for your time. Really appreciate everything.
Say thanks to Joseph. Joseph, can you, yeah, there he is. Thanks for Joseph for making sure that nothing blew up and I didn't do anything stupid. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Michelle, thanks very much. Jeanette, thank you for coming. I hope I didn't embarrass you. I love all the great things that go on in your part of the world, and I hope that I have an opportunity to come there sometime soon. Please come to Oklahoma City. I'd love to show you lots of great things, the work of Bruce Goff in particular.
I'm just really glad you pegged me as a Violet guy, you know, in the presentation. Well, seriously, Rand, I would really like to thank you for making this experience as pleasurable as it's been, even given everything that's going on. Thank you for being such a good player, coming along and doing the virtual presentation. Thank you to everybody who came in and joined us for the conversation at the end. And I suppose this concludes our spring lecture. You know, one other big shout out to our fall lecture. Please come consider joining us in the fall for Annabelle Seldorf, FAIA, as she comes and joins us. Hopefully, you know, if the fates allow, we'll be doing this in person at that point in time. And again, one last special thank you to the sponsors, again, who make this possible. None of this would happen without their support. So Rand, thank you very much. And this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Keep up the great work, Rand.
Thanks,
Rand. See you in Oklahoma City.
I look forward to that.